Within each of us lies an impressive power, the ability to transform small inconveniences into big problems. We often magnify life's inevitable challenges, creating dramas that burden us with unnecessary suffering. However, we can choose a different path, the path of the wise. This path teaches us that nothing need disturb our inner stability unless we allow it to happen. Adopting a mindset of non-disturbance, approaching each moment with serene acceptance rather than emotional turmoil, allows us to unlock deep reserves of peace and wisdom. Cultivating this skill requires dedicated practice. Little by little, the old habit of turning small hills into metaphorical mountains disappears, and we rediscover the grace of navigating life's ups and downs with centered balance. Thus, we can question our inability to deal with challenges and transform our approach, making our journey more peaceful and harmonious. When we encounter difficulties, we often find ourselves saying, "This is unbearable, I can't take it." But is this really true? Marco Aurelio challenges us to reflect on this perception. Why exactly does something feel so unbearable? When we stop to honestly consider this question, we can realize that, most of the time, we don't have a convincing answer. The truth is that most of the challenges we face are bearable as long as we have the proper perspective. Our mind tends to amplify problems, making them seem immense and invincible. But if we look objectively, we will realize that these difficulties are within our capabilities. Consider, for example, physical pain like a severe headache or back pain. These pains are unpleasant, no doubt, but are they really unbearable? How many times have we endured similar pain before? By labeling them simply as discomforts rather than crises, we realize that we can tolerate them. The same goes for stressful situations, like public speaking or facing difficult conversations. Anxiety can make them seem overwhelming, but millions of people face these scenarios daily without breaking down. We have within us a reserve of coping skills that we can access if we let go of the false belief that we cannot cope. Even deep emotional difficulties, such as the loss of a loved one or the end of a relationship, can feel unbearable. Grief is undoubtedly one of life's cruelest challenges, but over time, many of us discover that this pain can be endured if we remain resilient. Don't label something as unbearable so quickly. Question this judgment rigorously. You may find that the only thing that makes something unbearable is your perception and attitude. By clarifying this mistaken view, we realize that resistance is what makes things harder to bear. Of course, there are truly horrible situations, like terminal illness, abuse, war, and famine, that demand compassion and are extremely challenging. But even in these situations, many people find heroic resilience. For those of us who face more mundane struggles, we must stop pretending we can't bear them. We often label challenges as unbearable when, in fact, we can persevere with the right mindset. Question your own idea of unbearability. You have more courage than you realize. Lack of a defensible justification for not enduring a challenge may encourage you to adopt a posture of silent strength. Take a deep breath, stay calm and focused, and resist the urge to feel overwhelmed. Keeping our challenges in perspective, rather than magnifying them, allows us to face each moment with resilience. Tackle your problems step by step, calling on your problem-solving skills to come up with a plan of action. Accept that a certain degree of stress or discomfort may accompany the process, but know that resistance is what makes things feel unbearable. By consistently asking, "Why can't I handle this?" we can overcome this resistance and align with our innate capacity for resilience. We strengthen what we practice daily, just as exercising a muscle makes it more robust. Maintaining a resilient mindset makes this strength more accessible over time. There will always be new challenges to test us, but we don't need to convince ourselves that they are unbearable before we even try to face them. With disciplined questioning and a constant refusal to exaggerate our difficulties, we can navigate even the most frightening circumstances. The next time you encounter something that seems unbearable, stop and ask yourself, "Why is this unbearable?" If no defense arises, realize that you have the strength to continue, focusing on the how and not the why. Often, It is not the events that disturb us, but the way we perceive them. The philosopher Epictetus reminds us that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from our view of them. Difficulty itself does not disturb our inner peace. It is our interpretations and narratives that do it. Think about an everyday situation. You are stuck in a terrible traffic jam. For one person, this can be a source of panic, imagining all the disasters that will result from the delay. Worries accumulate, and the mind fills with catastrophic visions. However, someone else in the same traffic jam might take advantage of this time to listen to an audiobook or podcast, seeing the situation as an opportunity to practice patience. The objective fact is the same. They are both stuck in traffic. But the reactions are different because the perspectives are different. This principle applies to many areas of life. Spilling a drink in a restaurant may be a minor accident, but we can react with anger and frustration, disturbing our peace, or we can laugh it off, ask for some napkins, and move on. The incident itself doesn't change, but our reaction makes all the difference. Consider a job termination or denial of a promotion. This is certainly disappointing, but it doesn't need to be seen as the end of the world. We can agonize over the loss and be filled with bitterness, or we can see it as an opportunity to reevaluate, refocus, and follow a new path. The perspective we adopt can keep us unfazed or trap us in unnecessary suffering. While we can't control everything that happens to us, we can choose how to react. In the heat of the moment, when your mind is racing, pause, breathe, and try to adopt a more rational perspective. Events need not disturb us. It is our vision of them that can do this. Worry does not prepare us for the future. It only steals peace from the present. Anger cannot change the past. It only destroys our joy in the now. Applying reason to our perspectives protects us from being agitated by these draining mental states. Change your mindset and don't let yourself be enslaved by negative feelings. This doesn't mean denying reality or pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. It's about protecting our essential happiness by not allowing external circumstances beyond our control to determine our internal well-being. Facing a serious illness is, without a doubt, a great challenge. One perspective might see this as a death sentence, a reason to lose heart. Another, wiser perspective might see this as an obstacle to be overcome with courage or a reminder to value each day. The next time something distressing happens, don't rush to regret it. Stop and reflect on the perspective you are adopting. Is this vision disturbing your peace unnecessarily? Or is it a mindset that will help you persevere with grace and poise? You always have a choice about the direction of your thoughts. While we cannot control many external factors that impact us, we never need to surrender sovereignty over our opinions. Herein lies our true freedom. In the wise perspective that allows us to flow through life with balance, rather than being continually overwhelmed by events. The next time your thoughts dramatize a situation, shift your point of view to objectivity. The event will only have harrowing power if you grant that power through your interpretations. View obstacles as opportunities to grow and learn, always maintaining a perspective that cultivates peace and resilience. We all face obstacles in our lives, but how we deal with them defines who we are. Imagine building your life as a series of actions, each aimed at achieving a specific goal. While some external factors can hinder this process, none of them can prevent you from acting with self-control, justice, and wisdom. When an area of your life encounters an obstacle, accept it for what it is and redirect your energy to another action that is within your reach. This way, you adapt your journey, always seeking to live according to your virtues. Every choice and action must reflect these principles, regardless of the challenges that arise. Imagine an entrepreneur whose new business doesn't take off. He could despair, lamenting his lot, or he could see this as an opportunity to adjust his strategy, perhaps even discovering a new, more promising path. Likewise, someone who unexpectedly loses their job may use this situation as a time to reevaluate their priorities and explore new careers that are more aligned with their values and goals. Life is full of uncertainties and twists and turns. How we react to these changes is crucial. Don't waste energy fighting the inevitable. Instead, adapt, and flow like water around obstacles. Thus, we transform challenges into catalysts for new actions and personal growth. Consider the example of someone facing a serious illness. Instead of seeing this as a death sentence, this person can see the situation as a chance to explore their resilience and seek new therapeutic solutions. Even in the face of great adversity, our response is within our control, and we can choose to see them as opportunities for growth. In our relationships, we can't control other people's decisions, but we can control how we react to them. If a friend or partner decides to walk away, we can accept the decision with grace and make room for new connections rather than holding on to the past with resentment. This mindset of seeing obstacles as opportunities applies to all areas of life, including our creative and intellectual pursuits. A writer struggling with a project may choose to explore new ideas that flow more naturally. A student who struggles in one subject may discover a different vocation that suits them better. Accepting obstacles as a natural part of the journey allows us to move forward with resilience and creativity. Instead of viewing a fallen tree or rock slide as insurmountable barriers, we can anticipate these challenges and adjust our course as needed. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to reinforce our values and continue moving forward with wisdom and grace. Adopt this stance in your own life. You don't need to have all the answers or a perfectly mapped out path. Simply act in accordance with your principles of virtue and wisdom, adjusting fluidly as obstacles arise. Our stability must be rooted in the integrity of our ethical way of living, not external circumstances. Obstacles are not burdens to lament, but resources to help us break new ground. By embracing them as opportunities for redirection, we continually reaffirm our intention to move forward with conscious action. Even if the itinerary changes, our virtuous purpose remains steadfast. No obstacle can obstruct our path if we are committed to continual realignment rather than futile resistance. Thus, we face life with wisdom and grace, transforming each challenge into an opportunity for growth. How many times do we find ourselves tormented by apocalyptic scenarios that never come to fruition? We spend more time suffering in our imagination than facing reality. The human mind has an incredible ability to create hypothetical hells, torturing us with visions of the worst possible case. In fact, we are more often scared than actually hurt. Threats that seem so great in our imagination rarely materialize in the feared form. Yet we waste an enormous amount of energy grieving these imagined realities before they even occur. This tendency is a significant source of unnecessary suffering. By borrowing misery from the future, we feel panic and anguish in the present because of mere possibilities. Our mental movies of catastrophic futures exhaust us much more than the real situations we face. It is important to recognize this pattern and distinguish what actually happened from what we only conceive. The reality we face is often less monstrous than our frightening imaginations would have us believe. Most monsters remain confined to the dark corners of the mind. Take, for example, the fear of speaking in public. Before the event, we imagine all the possible humiliations, freezing, trembling, forgetting the words. But when we finally face the situation, it is rarely as traumatic as we imagine. We overcome failures and move forward. Unnecessary suffering is often caused by our tendency to catastrophize. We worry about health, financial stress, interpersonal conflicts, and other sources of anxiety. But reality is often less devastating than we imagine. Although significant difficulties may occur, the world continues to turn. Feverish anticipation paints things in doomsday tones, only for reality to expel our inner turmoil as an overreaction. This does not take away from the real crises that arise in life, such as the loss of a loved one or a serious illness. These represent genuine agonies, but even in them, projecting imaginary pain only increases our suffering. When we mourn a death, we don't need to exacerbate our pain by dwelling on hypothetical scenarios that will never unfold. When facing health problems, anticipatory fear of permanent disability often exaggerates challenges that are manageable. Abstract future worries rarely improve the situation. At best, they distract us from the present. At worst, they generate additional suffering. This mental tendency towards imaginary pains wastes vital energy. Overthinking, overanalyzing, and constructing fictional scenarios drains our energy unnecessarily. If we awaken to this habit, we can open up new sources of inner peace. Our minds are experts at manifesting imaginary pains that disturb us more often than reality requires. By becoming aware of the space between what is real and the terrors invented by our minds, we can intercept catastrophic thought patterns. We can root ourselves in current facts and realize that reality is often milder and more manageable than the absurd conspiracies we allow to colonize our minds. We don't need to make everything so dramatic. Much of life is neutral, neither exceptionally positive nor negative, but ordinary and mundane. Our minds, however, attribute exaggerated meanings to banal events, transforming them into imminent symbolic threats. When we disidentify from these self-created plots, we conserve our energy and attention for authentically challenging circumstances. In short, discerning the difference between rationally contemplating potential risks and getting lost in catastrophic fantasies is essential. We must seriously examine the source of our daily anguish. Often, it stems more from the stories we spin in our minds than from external circumstances. By pausing and grounding ourselves in the truth of the moment, we avoid unnecessary suffering and face each moment as it is, without the dramatic distortions of our imagination. How often do we find ourselves turning small incidents into major dramas? Marcus Aurelius wisely said that we don't need to turn this into something that disturbs us. Often, we are the ones who take a neutral situation and turn it into a source of anguish. A minor accident or inconvenience only becomes a crisis if we decide it should be that way. The root of many of our upsets lies not in the event itself, but in the stories we create around them. A small setback is inflated into an injustice that we need to fight, turning obstacles into emergencies that make us react frantically. But what if we just don't do it? What if, instead of getting upset, we paused and looked at the circumstance calmly? A flat tire, a rude comment, a delayed flight. None of these need be more upsetting than they really are. When we accept what happened and avoid exaggerating our internal narratives, the situation remains simple and manageable. We always have a choice in how much we let a situation upset us. We can break the habit of turning minor issues into major crises and face each event with a spirit of acceptance. Ask yourself, is it necessary to turn this into something bigger? The power to upset yourself unnecessarily is in your hands. Practice self-control before fueling drama in your mind. Become non-reactive, unfazed by the inevitabilities of life. A missed train or spilled coffee doesn't have to shake you unless you choose to. Consider a typical scenario, being stopped in traffic by another driver. For many of us, this is enough to make us spin, turning it into a personal affront, an unforgivable insult. We make up stories about the other driver's intentions and justify our outrage. But is this internal turbulence necessary? What if, instead of turning it into something bigger, we recognized it as a simple misdirection and moved on? By not generating resentment and emotional drama, we can let the neutral event remain neutral. This ability to avoid turning situations into crises applies to everything from small daily irritations to major life challenges. A romantic rejection doesn't have to be turned into a devastating judgment about our self-worth. Losing a job doesn't have to define our entire identity. Even significant illnesses or accidents do not need to be made worse by layers of negative narratives. Oftentimes, additional suffering derives from the meaning we insist on grafting onto neutral events. When we realize that we are the ones who transform circumstances into disturbances, we gain power over our mental state. With self-awareness, we notice when we are starting to exaggerate events and can choose not to continue. We can stop the train of anxious stories and observe the situation with calm acceptance. Cultivating this skill takes practice, as we are deeply conditioned to transform each experience into a dramatic story. But as we hone this skill of non-reactivity, we feel more significant levels of serenity taking root. we realize that much of our past suffering was never inherent in the events themselves. We created it. When we consciously choose to let situations be what they are, they become less loaded with excessive meaning. We reserve our energies to respond with wisdom and consideration, rather than wasting them on invented dramas. This mind space of acceptance gives us clarity about where our efforts are truly needed. Rooted in calm, we face life's inevitabilities with courage and poise rather than dramatic hysteria. It's not that we become insensitive. The big moments still move us as any human being would hope. But we gain control over our responses, avoiding increasing anguish through alarming stories. Nothing needs to disturb you unless you decide to turn it into something bigger in your mind. Rediscover the lighter side of life with this pose. The flat tire that used to cause despair now seems like a mere nuisance. The rude attendant is no longer a personal insult, but a momentary blip unworthy of derailing your good mood. You handle inevitable inconveniences with courage and poise. The practice of pausing before recounting events and self-created disturbances allows you to conserve your energy for true priorities. You rediscover the serenity that comes from letting circumstances be as they are, without inflating them unnecessarily. Don't create crises based on the inevitabilities of life. Let them pass with grace. The power of perspective is a transformative tool that can radically change the way we face challenges and adversity. Often, the difference between an overwhelming problem and a surmountable obstacle is how we see it. Reframing negative situations to see the positive can shed new light on the most difficult circumstances. When we adopt a broader, more compassionate view, we are able to see opportunities for growth and learning in situations that, at first glance, seem unbearable. Practicing gratitude is an effective way to shift our perspective. By focusing on the things we are grateful for, even in challenging times, we reprogram our minds to recognize the good in our lives, lessening the weight of difficulties. Small daily acts of gratitude can transform our mindset, helping us face challenges with more optimism and resilience. Another powerful technique is the practice of mindfulness. Being fully present in the moment, without judgment, allows us to see reality more clearly and less distorted by our emotions and prejudices. Mindfulness teaches us to observe our thoughts and feelings without identifying with them, creating space between what happens and our reaction to it. This space gives us the freedom to choose a more balanced and less reactive response. Changing our perspective also involves developing empathy and compassion, both for ourselves and others. By putting ourselves in other people's shoes, we can better understand their actions and motivations, reducing our tendency to judge and react negatively. Compassion for ourselves allows us to treat our own mistakes and failures with kindness, rather than wallowing in criticism and self-deprecation. Perspective is a conscious choice we make every day. We can choose to see difficulties as opportunities for growth, criticism as chances to improve, and obstacles as stepping stones to success. This choice empowers us, taking us out of the position of victims of circumstances and putting us in control of our responses and attitudes. When we change our perspective, we change our reality. By adopting a more positive and balanced outlook, we not only face challenges more effectively, but we also create a richer, more meaningful life. Perspective transforms our experiences, making us more resilient and able to find peace and contentment regardless of external circumstances. The power of perspective is in our hands, and by using it, we open doors to a world of possibilities and a fuller life. Self-knowledge is an essential and transformative journey that allows us to understand who we really are, our motivations, values, emotions, and behaviors. This deep process of self-exploration enables us to live in a more authentic and satisfying way, since, by knowing ourselves, we can align our actions and choices with our true desires and needs. When we know ourselves well, we have a solid foundation to face life's challenges, as we understand our strengths and limitations, which allows us to make wiser and more appropriate decisions. Self-knowledge begins with introspection, the practice of looking within and observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment. This practice can be facilitated through activities such as meditation, journaling, and reflection. Meditation, for example, helps us slow down and pay attention to what is happening in our mind and body, allowing us to recognize patterns of thought and behavior that may be harming us. Journaling is another powerful tool, as it allows us to freely express our feelings and thoughts, helping us to clarify and organize our internal experiences. Knowing our emotional triggers is a crucial part of self-knowledge. Triggers are those situations, words, or behaviors that provoke an intense emotional reaction. By identifying these triggers, we can work to disarm them, reacting in a more balanced and less impulsive way. This understanding also helps us communicate our needs more clearly and assertively, improving our interpersonal relationships. Self-knowledge also involves recognizing and accepting our flaws and imperfections. We all have aspects of ourselves that we prefer to hide or deny, but by facing them head-on, we can work to improve and grow. This process of acceptance is fundamental to developing self-esteem and self-compassion, as it allows us to be kind to ourselves even when we make mistakes. Self-compassion gives us the strength to face our difficulties with courage and resilience, instead of wallowing in self-criticism and despair. Furthermore, self-knowledge allows us to identify and follow our true values and passions. We are often influenced by the expectations of others or social norms, losing sight of what really matters to us. When we know ourselves well, we can make decisions that reflect our authentic values, leading to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. This clarity gives us the confidence to pursue our dreams and goals, even when we face obstacles or external disapproval. The journey of self-knowledge is continuous and evolutionary. As we grow and change, new layers of our being reveal themselves, requiring us to continue to explore and learn about ourselves. This constant search keeps us connected with our essence, allowing us to live more fully and truly. Self-knowledge is the key to a balanced and conscious life, as it gives us the insight and wisdom necessary to navigate the complexities of human existence with grace and effectiveness. In short, the importance of self-knowledge cannot be underestimated. It allows us to live according to our true values, respond to challenges with resilience, and build healthier, more authentic relationships. As we dedicate ourselves to this journey of self-exploration, we discover an inexhaustible source of strength and wisdom within ourselves, empowering us to live life with more purpose and joy. Managing expectations is a vital skill for living a balanced and fulfilling life. Many of the disappointments and frustrations we face arise from the expectations we create, whether in relation to ourselves, others, or the situations we experience. When our expectations are not met, we experience a sense of loss and discontent that can negatively affect our emotional well-being. Therefore, learning to manage these expectations in a realistic and healthy way is essential for peace of mind. Firstly, it is important to recognize that expectations are inevitable and, to some extent, necessary. They help us set goals and plan for the future. However, the problem arises when our expectations are unrealistic or inflexible. Life is inherently unpredictable, and people and situations don't always behave the way we expect. By accepting this uncertainty as a natural part of life, we can begin to adjust our expectations accordingly. A crucial step in managing expectations is cultivating self-acceptance. We often put excessive pressure on ourselves to achieve certain standards or results. By accepting our limitations and imperfections, we can set more realistic and compassionate expectations. This does not mean resigning ourselves to mediocrity, but rather balancing ambition with a realistic understanding of our capabilities and circumstances. Likewise, managing expectations for others involves recognizing that each person has their own set of skills, experiences, and challenges. Expecting others to behave exactly as we want is a recipe for disappointment. Instead, it's more productive to clearly communicate our needs and desires while remaining open and flexible to others' responses. Empathy and understanding are key in this process, as they help us see things from others' point of view and adjust our expectations accordingly. Another important aspect is mental flexibility. When we are rigidly attached to a specific vision of how things should be, any deviation from that vision can cause stress and frustration. Practicing mental flexibility involves being willing to adapt our expectations as circumstances change. This does not mean abandoning our goals, but rather adjusting our paths to achieve them with more resilience and adaptability. Mindfulness is an effective tool for managing expectations. Being present in the moment helps us reduce anxiety about the future and focus on what is within our reach now. By practicing mindfulness, we can recognize when we are creating unnecessary expectations and redirect our focus to concrete, achievable actions. This allows us to live with more satisfaction and less frustration, appreciating experiences as they happen. Managing expectations also involves finding a balance between hope and realism. It's healthy and motivating to have hopes and dreams, but it's equally important to base those hopes on a realistic assessment of your circumstances. This involves being well-informed, evaluating risks and possibilities, and preparing for different outcomes. This balance allows us to maintain enthusiasm and motivation without falling into the trap of unrealistic expectations. Finally, practicing gratitude can transform our perspective on expectations. By focusing on what we already have and appreciate, we reduce the pressure to have everything perfectly meet our expectations. Gratitude helps us recognize and value the small joys and successes of everyday life, reducing dissatisfaction with what we have not yet achieved. In short, managing expectations is a continuous exercise in self-knowledge, communication, flexibility, and gratitude. By developing this skill, we can significantly reduce the stress and frustration in our lives, allowing us to live with more serenity and contentment. It is a process that requires practice and patience, but the benefits are profound and lasting, bringing a sense of balance and harmony to our journey. Constructive communication is the basis of healthy and effective relationships, whether personal or professional. When we communicate clearly, respectfully, and empathetically, we create an environment of trust and collaboration that facilitates conflict resolution and strengthening bonds. The ability to communicate constructively is not innate for everyone, but it is something that can be developed with practice and conscious attention. The essence of constructive communication lies in active listening. This means listening not just to the words the other person is saying, but also paying attention to their emotions, body language, and intentions. Active listening involves being present and fully engaged in the conversation, without interruptions or hasty judgments. When we truly listen, we show the other person that we value their opinions and feelings, which can significantly strengthen your connection. In addition to actively listening, expressing yourself clearly and honestly is crucial. Communication problems often arise from poorly conveyed or misinterpreted messages. Being clear and direct when sharing our thoughts and feelings prevents misunderstandings and helps establish realistic expectations. Honesty, in turn, creates an environment of transparency and trust. However, honesty must always be accompanied by sensitivity. Telling the truth in a kind and considered way is essential to avoid hurting someone else's feelings. Empathy is another cornerstone of constructive communication. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to understand their perspectives and emotions can transform the dynamics of a conversation. Empathy not only helps resolve conflicts more effectively, but also promotes a sense of solidarity and mutual understanding. When we communicate with empathy, we show that we care about the other person's feelings and experiences, which can defuse tensions and pave the way for collaborative solutions. Maintaining a positive and constructive tone is also essential. How we say something can be just as impactful as what we are saying. Using language that is encouraging and uplifting rather than critical and defensive can completely change the direction of a conversation. Avoiding words filled with judgment or accusations and opting for communication that focuses on solutions and improvements helps create a more productive and harmonious environment. Using I instead of you in statements can help reduce the potential for conflict. For example, saying, "I feel frustrated when this happens" instead of "you always do this" puts the focus on the personal experience and prevents the other person from feeling attacked. This small adjustment in the way you express yourself can make a big difference in the reception of the message. Nonverbal communication also plays a crucial role. Our body speaks as much as our words, and being aware of our body language can support or contradict what we are saying. Maintaining eye contact, using appropriate gestures, and adopting an open posture are ways of reinforcing our verbal message and demonstrating our attention and interest. Patience and calm are essential virtues in constructive communication, especially in conflict situations. Reacting impulsively or angrily rarely leads to a productive resolution. Taking deep breaths, thinking before you speak, and staying calm can help keep the conversation civil and solution-focused. This also gives you time to reflect on the other person's words and emotions, responding in a more thoughtful and effective way. Finally, constructive communication is a continuous process of learning and improving. It's important to be open to feedback and willing to adjust our approaches as needed. Learning from experiences, both positive and negative, helps us grow as communicators and build stronger, more satisfying relationships. In short, constructive communication is a vital element for a fulfilling life and healthy relationships. It requires a constant commitment to active listening, clarity, empathy, a positive tone, awareness of nonverbal communication, patience, and a willingness to learn and grow. By cultivating these skills, we can transform the quality of our interactions and create an environment of understanding and collaboration that benefits everyone involved.